thank you, and welcome again. Distinguished guests, esteemed scholars, fellow heritage practitioners, and all respected participants joining us today. It is immense gratitude and pride that I welcome you all to this important webinar on Islamic archaeology in the Horn of Africa, organized by Hayyan. It's not only a privilege to speak with you today, but it's also a deep personal moment for me as this subject lays at the heart of both our organizational mission and my own journey in the cultural heritage preservation. On behalf of our team, I thank you for taking the time to be here, contribute, reflect, and chart ways to forward together. Let me begin by briefly introducing the organization behind this gathering, Hayyan Heritage. Hayyan is an independent Somali cultural organization committed to preserving, promoting, and celebrating the heritage of Somalis wherever they are. A heritage that spans centuries, crosses borders, and lives within the hearts, memory, and practice of our people. We work we did several projects, several campaigns. For example, what we have done so far, since I'm briefing you, we have done recently a heritage tour called Darinta Nawada, which can we translate as like the mat of peace, which was a first heritage tour which we went to the historical city Barawe. We have done several workshops and dialogues. For example, we hosted a multi-youth workshop and intergenerational dialogues that focus on Islamic history, oral traditions, and community-based preservations. This is a space for Somali heritage. We also, back in April, we did a project called Protect Somali Manuscripts campaign, which was very useful. We launched a public awareness campaign. For example, we hosted a webinar like this for documentation of manuscripts presented by Dr. Reza Iman Khairi, the head of metadata of Qatar National Library. We also did other projects like the lab, the Reviving Somali Quranic recitation site. A very unique thing we did already. This webinar is not an isolated event. I hope this will not isolated event. It's part of larger strategy to recenter Islamic heritage in Somalia and Horn of Africa in general. As the organizers at Hayyan, we commit gathering is not just conversation, but a catalyst for concrete action. We envision this dialogue leading to meaningful collaboration, whether through joint research initiatives, support for community-led preservation projects, and establishment of regional platforms or tools such as open access digital archives to document and promote Islamic archaeology heritage in the Horn of Africa. In conclusion, let me end by emphasizing this Islamic archaeology in the Horn of Africa is not a distant past. It's a living memory, current reality, and future responsibility. We owe it to our ancestors, our communities, and future generations to preserve and elevate this sacred trust. Before I conclude, I would like to extend my special thanks to Ms. Caroline Gomez for her presence and contribution to today's gathering. Your engagement reflects a growing international interest in the cultural heritage of our region, and we are grateful for your commitment. We also recognize and deeply appreciate the ongoing efforts of Spanish archaeologists, researchers who have worked often quietly but diligently on the documenting, studying, and protecting the Islamic and historical heritage of Horn of Africa. Your work has brought global attention to sites that deserve deeper recognition and protection. At Hayyan, we see this webinar not as an endpoint, as I mentioned, but as a beginning, a chance to build a stronger network, amplify shared knowledge, and take practical steps together. Thank you all once again for joining us. My today's dialogue be a source of learning, partnership, and renewed dedication to our shared cultural legacy. Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, and then since we have a short period of time, I think Carolina can start. So, Carolina, please go ahead.
Do you want me to share my screen or?
Please, please.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm. Do you see the presentation?
Yes, of course.
Perfect. So first of all, I would like to thank the Heritage Forum for inviting me today to give this webinar. And as you said, I would like to this to be like a network, not an isolated presentation. And I would like also to know you in a deeper way in the following years. As you said, I'm Carolina Cornax Gomez, and I'm PhD student of the INCIPIT CSIC, a heritage institution in Spain, in Santiago de Compostela. And today I'm presenting a part of my PhD research that is about the material culture of the Islamic medieval period of the Horn of Africa. And today I would like to talk about the history of the research on Islamic archaeology in medieval Horn of Africa, starting from the 19th century and ending with the new insights that has been made by the ongoing projects. First, to approach this theme, I would like to say that how I see the Islamic archaeology in the Horn of Africa. For me, this type of research is like the tiniest doll or of a Matryoshka doll game. I don't know if you know what a Matryoshka doll game is, but are these kinds of dolls in which the small ones, each small doll is within a bigger one, and the bigger one of them all has all of the rest of the dolls inside it. And this is for me the perfect metaphor of how I see the Islamic archaeology in the Horn of Africa, because even if there is a long tradition of archaeological research in this area, until recent times, it was mainly focused on the prehistoric archaeology, with works like the one of Stephen Brandt or the one of Margherita Musi, that have made a deep and huge work in rock shelters, lithic tools, and rock painting. But if we focus more in the historical periods, there is less done. There have been less research for the moment, and the most of this research has been focused in the Aksumite Empire, in the Aksumite period of the Horn of Africa. Yeah, but what about the other historical periods of the history of the Horn? When we come to the Islamic archaeology, we have seen that some projects have started in the 21st century, but they has also focused in very concrete and specific zones of the Horn of Africa, mainly in the areas of more political control, or where the capitals of the sultanates are. But we don't know much about what was happening in other regions of the Horn of Africa during the Sultanate period. What was happening within between the coastal zones and these areas of the capitals of the sultanates. For me, that's the little doll, the Islamic archaeology that is researching these intermediate areas that are in the middle of the coastal zones and the capitals of the sultanates. So what we have in the 19th century is a research very very focused in some concrete areas like the Chercher Massif in Ethiopia and the Harar region and the Dadawa region, and also in the Sowa or Siwa province of Ethiopia. Also in the Dahlak Islands and in the south of Somalia, but I'm only talking about the area of study that I'm focusing in my PhD area of research. But if we come to the 21st century, we have seen a spread of this area of study. We see how the projects that are ongoing right now are focusing also in these areas that the rest of the projects, the previous projects were focusing already. But we see how these projects are also spreading the areas of study. For example, we have the Hornis project led by Julien Loiseau, is now focusing in the in early Islamic cemeteries, early Islamic medieval cemeteries of the north area of Ethiopia, like in Tigray. But they have to stop because you will know better than me. Now the north area of Ethiopia is a little bit unstable. Also, we see the project of Timothy Insol Becoming Muslim that was focusing in the area of Harar, but he's also studying the surrounding area of Harar in sites like Harla or like Tulukorefta. But I think it's the State Horn project in which I'm working in my PhD, who was the most impulsive, who is spreading the most this area of study, because we are studying like the area that is between the Somaliland coast and these centers of political control of the sultanates. We are trying to know what is happening in the middle, and we are working in the south of Djibouti, eastern Ethiopia, in the border with Somaliland, and in the hinterland of Somaliland also. But I think the most important impulse to this spread of the area of study was made for sure by the institutions with which we work in the three countries, the CERD and the IRA in the case of Djibouti, the ARCCH in the case of Ethiopia, that I think they have changed their name. I think now they are the EHA, if I'm not mistaken. And for sure, the Heritage Forum and the National Museum of Hargeisa in Somaliland. Further than this concentration of the research in very concrete and specific areas of the Horn of Africa, what we are seeing also is that when we approach to the three main countries that I'm focusing my PhD on, have a very huge difference in how many written medieval historical sources are available to know the medieval period of these countries. For Ethiopia is the country in which we have more written sources available, either in Arabic or either from other points of view, like the Chronicles of the Christian Kings, or even foreign historical sources, like some reports of the Portuguese embassy that went to Ethiopia in the 16th century. The more important and known historical Arabic sources for the medieval history of Ethiopia allow us to reconstruct a little bit the history of the region from the 13th century to the 16th century, and the most important ones are five mainly. The Chronicle of Sawa, that is about the historical development of the Sultanate of Soa, mainly during the 13th century. Then the Chronicle of the history of the Walasma dynasty that will rule the Sultanate of Afat, and is based on counting the events of the 14th and 15th centuries. And then we have the texts of Alumari and Makrithi that focus on the description of the 7 known as Muslim kingdoms of the Horn of Africa during the medieval period. And then both focus respectively in the 14th century and the 15th century. And then we have maybe the most known one, that is the Futu al-Habasha. That is the chronicle of the conquest of Abyssinia by the troops of the great Imam Ahmed Gran, or I think it's Gurey in Somali, if I'm not mistaken. We also have the Christian chronicles, like the ones of Sara Jacob, Lemna Dengel or Esquendel, and the most known Portuguese chronicle is the one of Francisco Alvarez from 1520. But they allow us to see these events from another point of view, maybe an outsider one. So we can see that here we have a considerable amount of historical sources. And in Ethiopia, the archaeological tradition started in the 19th century. But for Somaliland and for Djibouti, we have a different situation. We have less historical sources. As much as I know, if you know any other source and you can give me some information, I would be grateful, because I'm searching for it. For Somaliland and the Somali people, we have also several mentions in the Futu al-Habasha, because they were an important part of the troops of the army of Ahmed Gan. But we don't have that much information. We have only these written sources, and then what we have is some anthropological and ethnographical studies, but from the 20th century. And then also the archaeological tradition started in the 19th century. But for Djibouti, the situation is even less known, because we don't have, as much as I know, any written source that mentions the region of Djibouti or the Afar people. And we have very few contemporary studies that goes in deep into the idiosyncrasy of the Afar people. We only have the Danakil diaries of Tessiger, but it's still very colonial literacy. And then the archaeological tradition to study the Islamic period started later than in the other countries. It started in the mid-20th century. So once we have give this approach to the different level of available written and historical sources, I would like to do a little brief summary of the history of research in each country to see also the differences in the archaeological tradition in the region. For Ethiopia, in the 19th century, we have the first approaches and the first mentions to the ruins to medieval ruins in the area. The first Western explorer that come to the region and mention some historical and medieval ruins was Richard Barton, that did a journey from the port of Seila in Somaliland to the city of Harar in Ethiopia. And he only documented and registered some ruins during his journey, but he didn't mention anything else, any detail about them. He was followed by Philip Pawliczek, that was more focused in the area of Harar, mainly in the site of Dakar Gobana, that will be much important to the following archaeological Islamic research, mainly to the French team that will start their research following this approach to Dakar Gobana made by Pawliczek. We also have Harald George Carlos Swain, that focused also in the region of Harar, but also in the course of the Wadi Shebele. that he also mentioned some historical ruins, but he didn't make any detail about them. And we also have Luigi Robecchi Brichetti, that was also that went again to the historical site of Dakar Gobana that was mentioned by Paulisque. The only explorer or researcher that was in other area was Leopoldo Traversi, that is the one who first studied the Shoah region, the Islamic remains of Shoah region, and he will be so important also for the research of the French team, because he will be the first to mention the sites of Ali Ghem and Ras Ali. And the site of Ali Ghem will be also so important in the research of the French contemporary archaeological team, because they will try to find this place of Ali Ghem.
Okay,
For the-
Carolina, can you please make your slides more on slideshow button? Because now it's small.
Now it's small. I
Yeah.
don't know if I can make them.
Yeah, just click on that slideshow mode.
I don't know if it's possible. Let me.
The button next to the minus. The button next to the minus. Yeah, there you go. Cheers. Thank you.
But can you see like this the text?
If you press, maybe
Yeah,
I don't
just try
know.
to click it.
Let
No,
me-
the next button. Yes, that one. Yes.
Okay, I was like this before, but I have the photos are very tiny. Sorry. Do you want me to continue?
Just try to click on the slideshow button.
But I don't think it's possible.
it's not fixed yet.
Try to. Mhm. Yeah, Dr. What you can click. You can tell her.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I think you were right. Just I don't know why it's not working, but it should. Yeah, that's if you go up there and maybe it's in Spanish, so I have no idea.
I don't know if it's possible to make it bigger.
Microsoft Word is in Spanish, so I have no idea where to go. But just
Okay, now I think it seems to everyone. Everyone can read it.
Like this, you want me to present it like this?
You can present,
Yeah,
but it means you have to click on the slides when you move, because we can't see. It's stuck on one slide.
Is it stuck?
Yeah, it's stuck
So
on one
you have
slide.
to make sure to click on the yeah.
Oh, whoa. Sorry, I didn't know. But
no, not at all.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
What can I? Let me.
Yeah, move your cursor to the left side. Your right
I
side.
think if you try to reshare, maybe it will work. So if you could just cancel this one and reshare, the screen will be perfect. Maybe.
I think this is the biggest that I can make it.
I think we can continue.
Yeah, it's okay for you.
Share the screen with us, so we can continue.
Now it's okay. You can go
Do you have? Can you please? Yes. Yeah.
Are you seeing the presentation?
Yeah, now it seems much better, but the biggest thing we can achieve is if you can share your screen with us. So, and if you are not able, it's okay. I think we can continue like this.
But I'm sharing it with you. You cannot see it, the screen.
Yeah, it's stuck on one side. Yeah, we can't see all of it.
I don't know what's happening, guys.
Yeah, maybe try one more time to reshare, unshare, and then reshare this whole
Okay,
PPT.
I will do
If
that.
it doesn't work, I think just carry on. It's better not to interrupt.
Okay,
Okay.
let me. Okay. What about now?
Yeah, let's see.
Try the slideshow again. Yeah.
Yes, I think.
Yeah, that's okay. No,
That's
maybe.
okay? Oh, I don't know what happened. Please, sorry. Okay.
Just maybe zoom out a little bit.
Right now you can see it?
Yeah, we can see it. I think it's visible. It's just it's a bit. Maybe just go on the minus sign and just one more time, and then I think it's okay.
To the minus.
Yeah, just to zoom out. Zoom out. Is that zoom out to zoom in?
Okay.
Just one more time.
Like this?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
like
perfect. Yeah,
Better?
that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will follow like this. Sorry, guys. Okay. Well, for the Islamic archaeology in Ethiopia in the 20th century, we have seen a little bit more of a spread of the area of research. There were researchers like François Saiz and Robert Chambard, or Huguet and Roger Josson, or Francis and Frey, that were all that were still focusing in the area of Harar, but they were now giving some details about what those mentioned ruins were. They were like recording them in more detail. They were saying, they were giving information about what they were finding in those places. If they were tumuli, if they were Islamic burials, if they were mosques, if they were settlements, and so on. And for the first time, we have a researcher, that is Madeleine Schneider, that was the first archaeologist that moved to the north of Ethiopia to do her research there, and also was the first archaeologist, Islamic archaeologist, that did the first systematic study of material remains of the Islamic medieval period of the area, because she then focused in the study and transcription of some Arabic inscriptions on Islamic funerary stelae. Then in the 21st century, we have these new projects that are going on in the Horn of Africa to study the medieval period of the Horn of Africa, and we see two things. First of all, that the projects increased comparing to the 20th century, and also that the area of study is getting wider. For example, the Hornis project that I have already mentioned, led by Julien Loiseau and Simon Dorso, followed the studies of Madeleine Schneider in the north of Ethiopia, and they were studying the early Islamic medieval cemeteries. Also, the project of François Xavier Faumelemar, they were following the steps of previous researchers, like the ones that mentioned Dakar Gobana and the ones that mentions Ali Ghem, and they tried to find the capital of the Sultanate of Aufat and the Sultanate of Bahr Saad ad-Din, and they follow the footsteps of Leopoldo Traversi, and they finally find the site of Ali Ghem, and they came to the conclusion that it was the capital of the Sultanate of Aufat, and they were even able to find the necropolis of the dynasty of the Walisma rulers of the Sultanate of Aufat. Also, we have the project of Timothy Insol, that was, as I already mentioned, focusing the area of Harar and the surrounding area. But also, we have started also to work there, the Spanish team, with the State Horn project, led by Jorge Torres Rodriguez. following the footsteps of Alexander de Courle, that was a British general and an explorer that demarcate the frontier or the border between Ethiopia and Somaliland. And during the process of delimiting the border, he recorded some archaeological medieval places that we have tried to find in our project. For Somaliland in the 19th century, we have also working there Richard Barton, that we have already mentioned, that he did a journey from Seila to Harar, and he was recording the ruins. And he was followed in this country by George Reville, that he did another journey from the Somaliland coast to the Valley of Daror in the east of Ethiopia. And he was the first to collect some archaeological materials in his surveys. And then we have also Harold George Carlos Swain, that was he did 17 trips to Somaliland, and he recorded sites like Bulahar, Tuli, and some in the area of the Haud and in the Ethiopian-Somaliland border. In the 20th century, we start to see the first excavation campaigns in the area of Somaliland. And here we have to mention mostly two researchers. First of all, Enrico Cerulli, that was mainly focusing on an area that he calls the Murtinia, that is the border area between Somaliland and Puntland right now. And also Neville Chittick, that was the first of doing an excavation, a systematic excavation in the Somaliland region. But his work is also really important because he's the first that worked with Somali archaeologist that you for sure will know better than me. That is Ahmed Duale Jama. That he made his PhD about the main mosque of Mogadishu. Then in the 21st century, we have also mostly the same archaeologists as in Ethiopia working in Somaliland also. We have the team of François-Xavier Faubert-Lemar that focused mainly in the port of Seila, and they recorded all the archaeological, medieval, and Islamic remains of the city, like the Qiblatain Mosque of Seila, and also the other archaeological remains of the medieval port. We have also the Somali archaeologist Sada Mire, that she made a huge media campaign, giving some light or throwing some light of Somali heritage. But she also, with the help of other Somali archaeologists like Anna Magern or like Ahmed Duale Jama and the institutions of archaeology of Somaliland, she made like a compilation of every known site in Somaliland. And this compilation had like more than 40 sites. And then from 2015, Alfredo González Ruibal and Jorge de Torres Rodríguez, they started to work on the area, also for sure with the institutions. And they first centered on the area of the coastal zone, but then they moved to the hinterland of Somaliland and the Ethiopian-Somali border. Sorry. Last but not least, for Djibouti, as we have already mentioned, the archaeological tradition on the Islamic period is more recent. It started in the mid-20th century with the works of Edgar Aubert de la Rue, who was the first explorer who mentioned the existence of the only medieval site known in the south of Djibouti until nowadays, that is called Handoga. this place, this site was also mentioned by following researchers as Luc Kern or Henri Labrousse and Roger Josson. And it was first excavated or dig by Gros, Ferry, and Bouvier, but they only were able to make some test pits. They didn't excavate or dig the whole site. Then, for the 21st century, the team of Xavier Guterres came again to the site of Khandoga, and they were able to make more excavations. They excavated several structures, but they also recorded some other types of structure, like several mosques, also an upper zone in the site that is called, he called it the Acropole. And they were also able to find a place dedicated to the metal working in the area. And they also collect some archaeological medieval and Islamic materials. And then in 2021, the Spanish archaeological team started to work also in the Khandoga site, continuing the excavations and trying to know more about the site. So I would like to focus now only in the Spanish archaeological work that has been done by the Spanish mission. I would like to start with Somaliland because it's the first country to which the team has arrived when the mission started in 2015. In the first steps of this research of the Spanish team, the project focused mainly on the coastal zones. The first aim was to record the most important ports of the coast of Somaliland, and the aims of the project were focused more on international trade with Asian enclaves like China or like India, or other enclaves in the Arabian Peninsula like Yemen. And they were for sure interested in traced these international routes that were going on in the medieval period through the Red Sea and through the Indian Ocean, but they were also interested in seeing how these routes penetrate the east part of the African continent, and mainly how they penetrated through Somaliland. So in the following campaign in 2016, they were still focusing in this aim of try to know how was the trade, the international trade, affecting the Horn of Africa in the medieval period. And they in 2016 is the first time that the project started to record some archaeological sites that were not only ports, also in the hinterland of the Somaliland country. They started to work also in the area of Borama, and also they decided to do two test pits in the site of Fardusa. And they found a lot of important materials that were trying to solve this question about how international trade was developing in Somaliland. In 2017, they were still focusing in the ports. They did 4 test pits in the port of Bulahar, and they found materials local and imported from the 13th century to the 19th century. And they also surveyed other coastal sites like Sillara and other villages of the interior. And then they went again to the zone of Borama and they register or documented sites like Amud or Gorgav. Then in 2018, they center mostly in the areas of Sanag and in the area of Audal in Somaliland. In the area of Audal, they registered again some sites that were really similar of those that were in the Borama region because they are near. And the main sites that they recorded were Abasa Hasadinle, Dameraka, Danarokolab, and Kababan Iskudarka, Dayaragarka Kifile. That were urban sites that they seem to have been part of the Sultanate of Bahr Saad ad-Din. Then in 2019, they decided to focus on one coastal site that is called His or Heis, that was not Islamic. It was an antique site from the 2nd century of the Common Era. It was a cairn field, and they decided to excavate several cairns to see also if in the antiquity period the trade routes that were working in the medieval period were already being used. Then the last campaign was in 2020, and it was mainly focused in the area of Berbera Burao. And in this campaign they decided to excavate in area, like systematically the site of Fardusa, that is the one that we can see in the upper part of the slide, documenting also that there was a huge necropolis, Islamic necropolis in the site. Then the work stopped in Somaliland, but we were invited again to come back in 2024, this time to work with the collections of the museum and to help the museum staff to try to conditionate the installations to give rise to this national museum that we are hoping that it will open soon. Then, sorry?
Yeah, I would like to say something to Abdi Omar. Abdi Omar,
sure.
kamarada ma xiran karaysaa? Abdi, ma xiran karaysaa kamarada Omar?
Are you talking to me?
There was one guy who... Now it's okay. You can continue, Carol.
Okay.
Mahatsani Khalid. So for Ethiopia, we have started our work in 2022. In our first campaign, we, as I mentioned before, we were trying to follow the footsteps of this British explorer and general of the army, Alexander Tekurle. He recorded some historical sites, some medieval sites in the two sides of the Ethiopian-Somaliland border, and we tried to find some of them in the Ethiopian part of the border. We were able to find three that were Auboba, Aubarre, and Ayalle. That they were Ayalle and Aubarre, they were in the Aubarre region, and Auboba is a little bit farther to the north. But we also were able to document some new sites that were not recorded by Kurle in the 20th century. And in these new sites, we find some things that are really interesting, like, for example, in the site of Kararu, we saw how the people of the medieval times of the area were still inhabiting and using the space, because we found like pre-Islamic cairns and pre-Islamic burials, and right next to it we found a huge Islamic and medieval necropolis, and they were also a settlement area. So the people of the medieval times were still using this space. Also, in the Oboba site, we found some types of burial that we didn't record it in any other area of the Horn until until nowadays. That is this that I'm pointing in the slide. That is a tombstone that was in a huge and in a very wide Islamic cemetery, and it was so impressive for us because we didn't found in any other site this type of tombstone. And then in the following campaigns, we decided to focus in the Allande site. That is this one that I'm pointing also in the slide. And we in this site, we decided to excavate some domestic areas, but we also documented the agricultural terraces and also the necropolis, the Islamic medieval necropolis that was on the site. And we excavated several structures, but we focused mainly in this one that is on the slide. That is a domestic area that was having divided zones, different zones within the house, in which we have we could recognize which activities were being made in each room, like the accumulation of food and so on. And last but not least, we started to work in Djibouti in 2021. This first campaign, we made like a survey of the whole of several zones of the south of Djibouti, like Kalisabieh or the Hill, or even the surrounding area of the capital of Djibouti. And we documented several types of sites. And the only one that was medieval, it was Handoga. That is the one that we decided to focus on. Here in the slide, in the first image, we can see all of the test pits that we have made all along our work in Djibouti. In the first campaign, we documented the whole site. We wanted to know how the length of the site, and we decided to do 4 test pits in different types of structure. And in the next campaign in 2022, we tried to find which we found them, in fact, in which structures Xavier Guterres and his team have excavated. And we also documented some other types of structures, like 2 mosques in the north, the necropolis, and the metal working area. In 2023, we decided to start excavating in area a domestic space. That is this one that you can see in the slide. That is a compound composed by several rounded or circular rooms that are connected by a semi-public space in the middle. That is this semicircle that you can see. And due to the material remains and to the archaeological record, we were able to distinguish also which activities were being made in each room, seeing like a difference of tasks in every room. In 2023, we started also the systematic documentation of the necropolis, in which we documented some types of tombs that we haven't seen before in any other site of the part of the Horn in which we have worked before. And we also started to excavate the mosques. And then we, in our several campaigns, we have found some material, some archaeological remains or archaeological materials that are talking us about Handoga in the international trade routes, like this Chinese coin that we found in one of the compounds. But also there is materiality that is talking, that is speaking to us about the Islamic idiosyncrasy that the peoples of Handoga had during the medieval period, like this. I don't know how to say it in English, really, but in French is encensoir, like burning pottery. To I don't know how to say it in English, but it's a burning pottery. So, in conclusion, I think the most important thing that the new projects that are going on and started to work in the Horn of Africa about the Islamic medieval period in the 21st century, what are doing is filling the gaps of the history of the medieval period of the region. No, now instead of focusing in the areas of the capital cities of the sultanates, what we try to find is, or try to answer, is what was happening in the middle, what was happening in the intermediate areas between the coastal zones and the capitals of those sultanates. Filling these gaps, what we are trying to do is to elaborate or to construct new narratives that, first of all, include the local knowledge, because in the State-Born project and in our research, we think is fundamental to include the local people, but also the local authorities, and work together with them to know more about the Islamic medieval period of the region, and is fundamental for us to ask also to the local people and elaborate those narratives with them.
One thing, Carolina.
Sorry?
The session is about to end. One thing. The session is about to end, so we have only 4 minutes to conclude it. So
oh, yeah, I will conclude. Sorry.
Yeah, okay, because we will not even have a time for answering the questions of the participants.
Sorry. If you want me to end right now, it's okay.
Yeah, is there someone who has a question to ask Carolina, or we can let her continue?
Well, I can only put it like in the screen. You can read it and that's it. But for us, is the most important thing is that we are trying to fill in the gaps, and we are working with you. And I would like to say Mahat Sani to everyone for inviting me, and especially to Khalid, my Shahib Khalid.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you, Carolina. I think Dr. Alabacho is raising his hand, so you can continue, Dr. Alabacho.
Thank you very much. Just not to miss the chance to say a few words. I'm very, very pleased to see you guys organizing this event, and I learned a lot from the synthesis that Carolina has
Thank you very
made
much.
on
Mahat-Sani.
Islamic archaeology in the Horn of Africa. This is quite interesting, and seeing you people in the PhD, pre-PhD organizing, running this talk and session is really, really pleasing. I'm sure my colleague out will compliment on this. So it appears to be, again, a kind of complementary session with our medieval studies in the Horn of Africa series that you all are now part. And I'm very happy that this initiative in Somalia, Hayan Heritage, with all other colleagues and friends, are really working harder towards this Islamic heritage. It is less emphasized in many ways, as we all know very well. So this is time to work on this and to glorify this, to promote these sites and to save them from further destruction, of course. So I'm very much curious. But one thing, maybe Carolina, if you have to take it as a comment to explore it further, it may appear to be quite early for you to answer this question. But in the coastal parts of the Horn of Africa, including Eastern Ethiopia, what I just started to notice is that the megalithic sites are quite mixed with Islamic sites. Most of them are abandoned, we know, and that may create a sort of problem at times. These Muslim graveyards are full of monolithic stones, as we can also see in northeastern Ethiopia. And you do have tumuli, which were in use by both the Muslims and the pre-Islamic communities. How do you get that mixed kind of structural appearance on these landscapes, and how are you planning to really demarcate these two types of communities from their structural leftovers? Thank you very much.